Check. 2, 2. Testing 1, 2, microphone check. 1, 2, 2, 1, 2. This is microphone check. Testing 1, 2.
Muy buenos días, bienvenidos. Simplemente una información logística. Toda la traducción simultánea va a ser a través del Zoom, así que se tienen que conectar, por favor, a la dirección que se les ha enviado. Y también eso, no se olviden que la reunión es híbrida, va a dar la oportunidad de que vean a las personas que están conectadas virtualmente y que se sientan parte de la reunión. Good morning, everyone. Just some logistic information. The simultaneous interpretation is going through Zoom, so you need to connect through your laptops or devices or mobile devices to hear the interpretation. And this also gives us the opportunity to connect with the people who's going to be virtually connected with us. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is a call to order for the Copant meeting. Could you please take your seats? We will be starting in 2 minutes. No, this is the opening ceremony, so nobody's going to
okay, just, yeah.
Good morning. Could we all please stand for the playing of the national anthem of Barbados? Thank you. Thank you. You may be seated. I would like now to have your undivided attention for a brief moment. There is a safety briefing from the Lloyd Erskine Sandiford Conference Center, which we need for you to take note of. So please listen for a safety briefing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barbados Conference Services Limited welcomes you to Lloyd Erskine Sandiford Center. Before the start of the function, please take note of a few housekeeping matters and safety procedures. Washrooms for ladies, gentlemen, and the disabled are on both floors, on the eastern, central, and western areas of the center, and on sites where they indicate washrooms closest to this room. In the event of a fire, at the sound of the alarm, you will be required to immediately exit the building by way of the nearest exit, all of which are clearly marked. If you are exiting from the upper floor, the stairs, not the elevators, must be used. In all emergency evacuations, the official assembly area is the main car park on the eastern side of the building, where you are asked to rigor. We thank you for your attention and always keep the most historical time with us.
Senator the Honorable Lisa Cummins, Minister of Energy and Business. Mrs. Janet Stabel Cardenas, Cuban Ambassador to Barbados. Mr. Mauricio Cespedes, President of the Pan American Standards Commission. Mr. Sergio Mujica, Secretary General of the International Organization for Standardization. Mr. Felipe Metzger, Secretary General and Chief Executive Officer of the International Electrotechnical Commission. Mr. Derek Omar, Chief Executive Officer of the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality. Mrs. Jennifer Hunt, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Business Division. Mr. Ryan Braffett, Chairman of the Barbados National Standards Institution. Mr. Hayden Ryan, Acting Director of the Barbados National Standards Institution. Heads of national standards bodies and delegates of the Americas, other BNSI Board of Directors, staff of the Barbados National Standards Institution, staff of the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality, specially invited guests from the private sector, distinguished guests and others from the public agencies and quality institutions, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome you as Master of Ceremonies to this Copant General Assembly for 2023. My name is Fabian Scott. I am the Chief Technical Officer at the Barbados National Standards Institution. And we will have an opening ceremony with remarks by several persons who we wish to call upon very shortly. First, I would ask that Mr. Osvaldo Petroni, who is the past president of the Pan American Standards Commission, deliver his remarks. Mr. Petroni.
De la Organización Regional de Normas y Calidad de CARICOM, señor Mauricio Céspedes, presidente actuante de la Comisión Panamericana de Normas Técnicas, señor Hayden Ryan, director actuante del Instituto de Normas Nacionales de Barbados, y miembros de su staff, representantes de los organismos nacionales de normalización, miembros de Copant, distinguidos invitados de otras organizaciones internacionales y regionales vinculadas con la infraestructura de la calidad, miembros de la prensa presentes, participantes todos de esta Asamblea General de Copant. Agradezco esta oportunidad que tengo de poder dirigirme a ustedes como expresidente, en uso, desde principios de este año, de licencia a mi cargo. Como comuniqué a todos los miembros de Copant a través de mi nota de diciembre pasado, el Consejo Directivo de Copant aceptó, y con la gran tranquilidad de saber que Mauricio Céspedes iba a tomar la conducción de nuestra organización para completar el mandato hasta esta Asamblea General, con su destacable generosidad y máxima predisposición, gesto que agradezco inmensamente. Espero no haber defraudado la confianza que depositaron en mí hace 2 años. Me hubiese gustado poder estar con ustedes en esta primera Asamblea General que organiza Copant de manera presencial y con posibilidad de participación remota, desde la última oportunidad en que nos encontramos cara a cara en abril de 2019. Circunstancias de diversa naturaleza han dificultado mi presencia física allí, pero pienso que esta participación a distancia, de alguna manera, simboliza el sino de la presidencia que me ha tocado desempeñar, marcada por un fenómeno que conmocionó a la humanidad por casi 3 años. Y es que la pandemia de la COVID-19, con sus sucesivas olas, cepas y variantes, impactó no solamente las actividades de todas las organizaciones, sino también nuestras vidas, de manera dramática en muchos casos. Todos hemos debido asimilar cambios en nuestros hábitos de vida y de trabajo, y también, lamentablemente, pérdidas de afectos, víctimas de esta maldita pandemia. Pero de todo este dolor y desafíos, la humanidad sacó a lucir su resiliencia para sobreponerse. En este sentido, Copant también ha sido ejemplo de resiliencia. En estos 20 meses que duró mi mandato, me tocó liderar la transición desde la plena pandemia hasta una paulatina vuelta a cierta normalidad. La obligada virtualidad y la consecuente reducción de costos asociados a la presencialidad nos han dejado valiosas enseñanzas que estamos capitalizando para un uso más eficiente de los recursos de Copant. Además de asegurar la continuidad de las actividades de nuestra organización, hemos mantenido una sólida situación patrimonial, a la vez que se pudieron otorgar en los 2 últimos años importantes bonificaciones en las cuotas de membresía anual de nuestros miembros, para aliviar, en un gesto de solidaridad, su situación financiera frente al impacto económico de la pandemia en todos sus países. Hemos seguido fortaleciendo la relevancia global de Copant a través de nuestra presencia en distintos eventos internacionales y regionales, beneficiándonos por la participación remota. Y hemos formalizado memorándum de entendimiento con otras organizaciones regionales, como el Congreso de Normas del Área del Pacífico, PASC, y la Organización de Normalización del Consejo de Cooperación de los Estados Árabes del Golfo, GSO. A través de un accionar coordinado entre los miembros de Copant, se ha conseguido mantener y mejorar la representación de nuestro continente americano en los órganos de gobernanza de la isla. Este año, nuestra región tiene un vicepresidente, 4 miembros del Consejo, 4 miembros del TMB y 2 de los 3 presidentes de los comités de elaboración de políticas. Copant ha salido fortalecida de esta transición y durante esta asamblea se presentarán no solamente la fecunda actividad realizada este último año con el fin de fortalecer las capacidades de todos nuestros miembros como organismos nacionales de normalización, aumentando su involucramiento y competencias para participar activamente de las actividades de normalización internacional, sino también todas las iniciativas y planes de acción en marcha para dar soporte a la consecución de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible de las Naciones Unidas, incluyendo cuestiones como el cambio climático, la diversidad, inclusión y género, y la transformación digital. Agradezco el apoyo que he tenido estos casi 2 años de parte de todos ustedes, del Consejo Directivo y de la Secretaría Ejecutiva. Confío plenamente en que las nuevas autoridades que surjan de esta Asamblea van a continuar y seguramente mejorar esta gestión que me tocó liderar para beneficio de todos los miembros de Copant y de las sociedades de nuestro continente, para cuyo bienestar trabajamos. Gracias a todos y como les dije en mi nota de diciembre, cualquiera sea mi rol en esta maravillosa hermandad de la normalización, seguiré guardando por Copant, sus miembros y sobre todo su gente, mi mayor afecto y un lugar muy especial en mi corazón. Gracias, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Petroni, for your remarks. I would now like to invite the President of the Pan American Standards Commission, Mr. Mauricio Céspedes, to the podium to deliver his remarks. Mr. Céspedes.
Buenos días. Senadora Honorable Lisa Cummings, Ministra de Energía y Negocio y demás autoridades de gobierno, señores y señoras diplomáticas que nos acompañan el día de hoy, señor Hayden Rind, director de BNSI y miembros de su consejo directivo, señor Osvaldo Petroni, expresidente de Copant, señores Philippe Metzger y Sergio Mujica, representantes de los organismos internacionales IS e ISO, respectivamente, señor Derek Omar, CEO de CrossQ, representantes de los miembros de Copant e invitados especiales. Quisiera iniciar dando un agradecimiento a nuestros anfitriones por la organización de esta actividad y por todas las atenciones que nos han dado hasta el momento. Como lo comenté la noche de ayer, me alegra y entusiasma mucho que podamos estar compartiendo de manera presencial. Luego de nuestra última asamblea en el 2019 en Cartagena, que fue la última en la que pudimos vernos de esta forma. Es un honor para mí y además una gran responsabilidad haber asumido en enero de este año el rol de la presidencia de Copant, luego de que, como ya escuchamos, nuestro colega Osvaldo Petroni haya tomado la decisión de tomar una licencia con el fin de dedicarse plenamente a su nueva responsabilidad. Y aquí aprovecho para agradecer profundamente toda la labor y la entrega que hizo Osvaldo durante su gestión. En los próximos minutos resaltaré lo que considero son algunas de las actividades más relevantes dentro del accionar de Copant. Como primer punto, se ha identificado que los talleres de intercambio de buenas prácticas son una herramienta que los miembros de Copant aprovechan mucho y le ven mucha oportunidad. Es por esto que para el 2023, en nuestro plan operativo, se contemplan más talleres de esta índole. A la fecha, se han llevado a cabo 6 talleres, incluyendo 2 que se han organizado en el marco de KICA. Se han programado varias capacitaciones, entre pasantías, cursos cortos. Sin embargo, es importante solicitarle a los miembros un mayor involucramiento en este tipo de actividades y que además puedan sugerir expertos que nos puedan apoyar dictando estos cursos que son un beneficio para todos nosotros. Los grupos focales de Copant están activos y con reuniones bastante periódicas. Y es importante recalcarle a los miembros la importancia de participar en estos grupos focales, dado que por ahí se organizan capacitaciones en temas específicos, se revisan agendas de las reuniones plenarias de todos los diferentes comités y si se dan las condiciones, incluso se pueden plantear posiciones armonizadas para la región. También es una oportunidad para los organismos de normalización que no participan en esos comités técnicos particulares conocer sus documentos, los que se están estudiando y eventualmente tener argumentos necesarios para convencer a sus partes interesadas. Copant también está apoyando en la ejecución del proyecto regional con financiamiento de PTB sobre la infraestructura de la calidad para la economía circular. Y se planifica publicar en los siguientes meses una guía panamericana para incluir la circularidad en la normalización. Ya escucharemos más detalles de este tema en el informe que nos dará la secretaria ejecutiva. Nuestra relación con los organismos regionales e internacionales de normalización son sumamente importantes y ocupan gran parte de la agenda de nuestra organización. La comunicación con ISO, con IEC, a través de sus responsables regionales, es muy fluida, lo que ayuda a organizar eventos en conjunto y lograr apoyo para nuestras actividades. La representación de nuestra región que se ha logrado en los órganos de gobernanza de estas dos organizaciones y en especial de la ISO no debe descuidarse y deberíamos tener un plan de sucesión para mantener nuestra representación en todas las gestiones. Quiero finalizar agradeciendo a nuestra secretaria ejecutiva, Cori, por el importante trabajo que lleva a cabo y la buena ejecución de la estrategia que como organismo nos hemos planteado. Les deseo a todos una muy exitosa asamblea. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cespedes, for your remarks. I would now like to invite the Acting Director of the Barbados National Standards Institution, Mr. Hayden Ryan, to the podium to deliver his remarks. Mr. Ryan, please.
Senator, the Honorable Lisa R. Cummins, Minister of Energy and Business Development, including the International Business and Leader of the Government Business in the Honorable Senate. Ambassador Yannick Stable Cardenas, Cuban Ambassador to Barbados, Mr. Mauricio Cespedes, President of the Pan American Standards Commission, Mr. Osvaldo Petroni, the past President of the Pan American Standards Commission, Copant, Mr. Sergio Mujica, Secretary General of the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, Mr. Felipe Metzer, the CEO of the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, other ministers of government online, Mrs. Cori Iguino, Executive Secretary of Copant, Mrs. Jennifer Hunt, Permanent Secretary in Business, Ministry of Energy and Business, Mr. Derek Omar, CEO of the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality, CROSSQ, heads of national standards bodies and delegates from the Americas, Copant Board of Directors, the BNSI Board of Directors, BNSI staff, specially invited guests from the private sector, distinguished guests from other public agencies and quality institutions, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Barbados National Standards Institution, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the 2023 Copant General Assembly, right here in Barbados. We're delighted to have the opportunity to host this important event, which brings together standards bodies from across the Americas and the Caribbean to discuss and collaborate on the development of standards and quality assurance practices. This occasion is particularly special as we've not been able to meet face-to-face for 3 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'm extremely heartened to see the familiar faces of the Copant family and of our brothers and our sisters from the global standards community. It's really a pleasure to see you all. And all of you have weathered the various challenges in your respective countries, and we've come together once more hosted in our lovely country, Barbados, and it is indeed an honor to have you here. So as we're gathered, we're reminded of the critical role that standards and quality assurance plays in promoting economic growth, in promoting social development, and the sustainability of our environment. The BNSI is proud to be a leading institution in the development and the promotion of standards and quality assurance in Barbados. And we are committed to ensuring that our national standards meet the highest international best practices. We believe that the development of standards and quality assurance practices is essential to building a more resilient and sustainable future for our economies and societies. So at BNSI, we're committed to promoting these practices, and we believe that Copant is an essential partner in this type of work. Comparatively, BNSI, we're a small member state and a small body in a relatively small member state, and we're really appreciative to all the other member states today who have supported the work that we are doing. I particularly would like to express thanks for the financial support, even to have this meeting. We've had support from the Pan American Standards Commission Secretariat, of course, the American Society for Testing and Materials, and that's ASTM International from the USA, also supported all that you see here. We've had support from the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, so I applaud you for your support. The Spanish Association for Standardization, UNE, the Brazilian National Standards Organization also contributed, I thank you. The Standards Council of Canada, SCC, we thank you for your support. And the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, and of course, our CARICOM body, CROSSQ, which is the CARICOM regional organization, also supported in all that you see here and all that will be delivered over the next few days. For that, I give you a round of applause, and I think you're deserving of such. So all of you helped to make this week possible, along with the tremendous support from our government, agreeing to host through our ministry, ably led, of course, by Senator the Honorable Lisa Cummins, Minister of Energy and Business, as well as the tireless hours of planning and of preparation from the BNSI team that you see to my left and at the back. Over the past 50 years, we've played a crucial role in the development of standards in Barbados. And the timing of what we are having here is tremendous because it coincides with our 50th anniversary. So BNSI, we're celebrating 50 this year, and we've worked tirelessly to ensure that standards meet international best practices. We've developed national standards in a wide range of areas, including construction, building materials, energy efficiency, food safety, environmental management. Over the next few days, I'm sure we will have the opportunity to detail such. So, as we're gathered, we're mindful of the need to strengthen the regional cooperation and the collaboration in the development of standards and quality assurance practices. The Copant General Assembly provides a unique opportunity for standards bodies across the region to share experiences and to share your best practices and to identify areas where we can work together to promote the development of standards. And in working together, we will meet the needs and bring solutions to our various economies. So finally, at BNSI, we're committed to promoting standards and quality. We're committed to support the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We recognize that these SDGs provide a roadmap for building a more sustainable future, and we believe that standards and quality assurance practices can play a critical role in achieving these goals. Many of the visitors to our lovely country may not be aware, but there's a sharp increase in the demand for even water in our country. You've entered into a relatively dry, we consider it a drought period, and even demands on water at present are high. We were severely affected by ashfall from one of our neighboring countries had a volcanic eruption, with which the cleanup bill was around $22 million for us in Barbados. Again, responding to very real climatic changes. And I'm sure that the discussions that we're going to have will bring resilient solutions to such climatic instances in not just Barbados, but all of the developing states and all of the members within Copant. So in conclusion, I would like to thank all of you for joining us here in Barbados. We look forward to a productive and informative event. We're committed to working with our colleagues across the region to promote the development of standards and quality assurance practices that meet the needs of our economies and of our societies. I thank you and I welcome you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan, for your timely words. At this time, I would like to welcome the chairman of the Barbados National Standards Institution, Mr. Ryan Braffett, to the podium to deliver his remarks. Mr. Braffett, please. Thank you.
Senator the Honorable Lisa Cummins, Minister of Energy and Business, Honorable C. Sandra Husbands, MP, Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Business Development, Ms. Janet Stable Cardenas, Cuban Ambassador to Barbados, Mr. Mauricio Cespedes, President of the Pan American Standards Commission, Copant, Mr. Sergio Mujica, Secretary General of the International Organization for Standardization, Philip Metzer, Secretary General and CEO, International Electrotechnical Commission, Mr. Derek Omar, CEO of the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality CROSSQ, Ms. Jennifer Hunt, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Business, the Business Division, Mr. Hayden Ryan, Acting Director of the Barbados National Standards Institute, Head of National Standards Bodies and delegates from the Americas, BNSI Board of Directors, staff of the BNSI, staff of CROSSQ, specially invited guests and the private sector, distinguished guests from the public agencies and quality institutions, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the Pan American Standards Commission, otherwise known as Copant Annual General Assembly Meeting 2023. As Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Barbados National Institution, let me express on behalf of the management and staff our pleasure in hosting this event post-COVID-19. We recognize the importance this event provides as a platform for experts and stakeholders to exchange ideas and best practices on matters relevant to business, government, or economies, and the work of national standards bodies. National standards bodies like BNSI are key enablers of economic growth and progress. They provide a common framework and platform for stakeholders to establish harmonized standards and guidelines that enable interoperability, facilitate trade, and foster innovation. As we gather here today, we recognize the important role that national standards bodies play in driving innovation, supporting trade, and ensuring safety and sustainability. By establishing common standards and supporting conformity assessment procedures, we can create a level playing field for businesses and industries to innovate and compete in the low-carbon economy. The quality infrastructure also helps ensure that consumers can trust the products and services they buy, reducing the risk of fraud, safety hazards, and negative environmental impacts. In addition to the General Assembly, we also invite you to explore Barbados, experience the rich culture, history, and natural beauty. From breathtaking landscapes to iconic landmarks and world-renowned cuisine, there is something for everyone to discover and to enjoy. At the same time, we acknowledge the urgent need to address the pressing challenges of our time, particularly the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These goals provide a framework for a sustainable future for all, and national standards bodies have a crucial role to play in achieving them through standardization and conformity assessment. Our national standards body, the BNSI, is committed to leveraging our expertise and resources to support the development and implementation of quality infrastructure solutions that promote sustainability and enhance resilience. We have prioritized several areas where we believe can make a meaningful contribution to achieving these sustainable development goals. And one of the areas where we have focused our efforts on is promoting energy efficiency in buildings. Buildings are responsible for a significant contribution of greenhouse gas emissions, thus improving their energy efficiency can help reduce these emissions while also reducing energy costs for building occupants. To support this goal, the BNSI and our network of Caribbean community standards bodies have developed a range of standards and testing labs termed Centers of Excellence, along with an energy efficiency code that promotes energy efficiency in these buildings. These standards covered areas such as building design, construction, and operation, as well as the use of renewable energy sources. We are actively involved in developing standards that support the use of renewable energy resources, such as solar energy and wind power. These standards establish common criteria for performance and safety, enabling businesses and industries to innovate and compete in low-carbon economies. One area which we will begin to focus our efforts on is promoting sustainable agriculture and fishery. Agriculture and fishery are major sources of greenhouse gas emissions, but they also have the potential to be part of the solution through practices that sequester carbon, reduce emissions, and enhance biodiversity. To support this goal, the BNSI will be developing a range of standards that promote sustainable agriculture and fishery. These standards cover areas such as sustainable land use, aquaculture, and responsible biodiversity management. Furthermore, we are actively involved in developing international standards, establishing conformity assessment procedures, collating case studies, and presenting business models that support the circular economy, which is a key element of a sustainable future. Circular economy standards promote repurpose, reuse, recycling, and reduce waste, supporting the transition to a more resource-efficient and sustainable economy. The circular economy approach has the potential to transform our current business models to one where achievement of carbon-neutral economy in Barbados by 2030 becomes a grand reality. In all of these areas, the BNSI is committed to working with stakeholders to develop quality infrastructure solutions that are relevant, effective, and responsive to the needs of the society. We recognize that the challenges we face are complex and multifaceted and require a collaborative and multi-stakeholder approach. National standards bodies, therefore, play a critical role in supporting the achievement of the SDGs by developing and implementing standards and quality infrastructure services that enable our stakeholders to achieve sustainability, enhance resilience, and drive innovation. We are contributing to a more sustainable and prosperous future for all. Finally, in your deliberations, I imagine that you will have the opportunity to share best practices, learn from one another, and explore new ways to collaborate and strengthen your respective national standards bodies. We are confident that the discussions and deliberations that will take place over the next few days will contribute to the advancement of quality in the Americas and support our collective efforts to achieve the United Nations SDGs. Once again, welcome to Copant AGM 2023, and we look forward to a productive and a prosperous meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braffett, for your thoughtful words. And our final speaker on the program, I would now like to invite Senator the Honorable Lisa Cummings, Minister of Energy and Business, to deliver her remarks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do something that I don't usually do and say something that I don't usually say, all protocol having been established. So it is a terrible thing, I think, usually, but I think after 5 speakers have introduced and acknowledged all of you, perhaps I can get away with it on this occasion. I have the privilege of welcoming you to Barbados, and I'm thankful to all of those who have spoken before. For those of you who are here in the room, I hope that you have an opportunity to enjoy our beautiful island. But for those of you who are joining us on Zoom, I'm hopeful that we'll have an opportunity to welcome you to Barbados soon. This is the first time, and I believe the director did mention that you are meeting in some time. So it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to this Copant Assembly. This is being hosted, as you know, by the Barbados National Standards Institution, and you are here in their 50th year, and we would want to celebrate that as well. The Barbados National Standards Institution is the entity here in Barbados, along with many of the other entities which sit under the remit of the Ministry with responsibility for energy and business, that will focus on a range of things. And I want to take a few moments today to speak about what some of those things are. This joint event will create a perfect platform for us to speak to what some of the opportunities are. We're talking in this instance about the creation of sustainable development and sustainable economic opportunities in the first instance. And for certain, Barbados is looking forward to strengthening ties with our colleagues from across the Americas, here in the region and of course across the Americas. I am not going to share what many of you have experienced over the last 3 years, except to say we've all experienced COVID. And what that has meant is that businesses have been affected, businesses have scaled back, companies have been affected in terms of their revenues, and it means that now we are ramping back up, increasing production, increasing scale. There is a greater need for us to focus on what is going to build competitive advantage in companies across the Americas, and certainly for us here in Barbados and in the region, what is going to build competitive advantage for companies and businesses in Barbados. Now, if we were to consider what constitutes competitive advantage in the first instance, and we connect that to quality, there is an inherent link, and you have economists like Adam Smith historically, and one of my favorites, Michael Porter, who talks about the competitive advantage of nations, and they define what goes into constituting quality, what builds firm competitiveness. And in some instances, they link that to quality. In all instances, they link it to perceptions by consumers of what is quality. And so a firm in Barbados and across the region and across the Americas building competitive advantage after being pummeled by a COVID-19 pandemic where their revenues were debilitated is going to have a renewed focus, we expect it to, on what builds quality, what builds consumer satisfaction, and what builds sustainable competitive advantage. And it is on these issues that I would wish us to spend some time this morning. In Barbados, we have close to 90% of our landscape in the business community, which are constituted by micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. It means that scale is a challenge. And if you are not able to compete on volume, you are oftentimes not able to compete on price, but you have to be able to compete on quality. You have to be able to make sure that that quality product is not just subjectively supported by the consumer because it looks good, but that it delivers on the expected promise in terms of performance. And it is on that basis that we are connecting consumer satisfaction, the development of quality products, investments in the small, micro, and medium-sized enterprises with the launch of a national quality policy here in Barbados, led by the Barbados National Standards Institution. The Barbados National Quality Policy is expected to develop a range of standards all across the business sector, across the business community, and it is my expectation that with it, we will see stronger businesses, stronger products built on quality. But here's where the challenge comes, and I'm making the challenge to us across the region in particular. The CARICOM region specifically, we have with us CrossQ based here in Barbados, and then across the Americas. In order to build on the capacity, and I call it the capacity that we accumulated during COVID. During COVID, we were forced to work together. Health officials were able to work across the region with CARFA, with the Pan American Health Organization, with the World Health Organization to collaborate on sharing and finding solutions to common problems. Equally, entities like CrossQ, in collaboration with the Barbados National Standards Institution and with ministries like the one that I have the privilege of leading, the Ministry with Responsibility for Energy and Business, we have an opportunity to work collaboratively with our ministries and our agencies with responsibility for industry, with our agencies and ministries with responsibility for trade, and those with responsibility for business, to ensure that we're able to pool our resources using the principles of production integration that is standards-based. What if, and why not, can Barbados and the countries across the CARICOM region not use the mechanisms that are already enshrined within the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas for production integration to be able to scale your production across firms and businesses and sectors and industries based on quality? We do not have the capacity, if we are based on micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, to compete on volume. We've established that. Not if we are functioning as individual entities. But if we're functioning on a regional basis and we're functioning on the basis of quality collaboration, then we change the paradigm. Then we're having an entirely different conversation. And I want to challenge the standards institutions to rationalize how across the region, across the Americas more widely, we are able to pool our collaborative resources across the agencies that support private sector development, in particular in support of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. I would love to be able to see many of the small businesses that are struggling to achieve scale but have, in fact, benefited from your national standards institutions and are producing quality products, but they're still just small and they're niches, and so they have to be able to benefit from pooled resources. We cannot lose the advantages, and I call them advantages because COVID was not just all negative. The COVID pandemic did not just teach us all the things that we ought not to do, but it showed us the benefits of collaboration across our region and across the hemisphere. This is an opportunity which we must not lose. As Minister of Energy, I'm also very aware that we have an aggressive target by 2030. We already have established that Barbados is going to be going, and we have our national energy policy, which we've spoken about. Last week, we hosted here in Barbados the United Nations Special Envoy for Energy. We are now revising what used to be our Barbados national energy policy and overlaying that with what a Barbados national energy investment policy is going to look like. But there is the business of energy as well, and with it must come quality standards. And the chairman, in his remarks, he spoke about the investment that Barbados is making in solar PV panels and wind and energy efficiency in business. Those are all important concepts, and those are all perhaps instances where Barbados is leading the rest of the world as a small island developing state, notwithstanding our challenges. But there is also an opportunity for us to develop standards-based service-level agreements across all of the renewable energy sectors, and that work has already begun in the Barbados National Standards Institution, and it is part of the reason why we're able to see what I believe is a perfect pairing of the Ministry of Energy, with responsibility for the substantive rollout of an energy policy, alongside the ministry with responsibility for business, which creates private sector-led initiatives and intervention in the market, and with the Barbados National Standards Institute as the institution as the backbone. All of that is based on quality. So I am looking forward to working with all of you, both in my capacity as Minister with responsibility for energy and business, but also, hopefully, as a proud citizen of the Americas and the CARICOM region, where we're able to see that within the next few years, we're able to have the benefit of pooled collaboration across the Americas in support of production capacity and the building of competitive advantage on the basis of standards, particularly focus on our micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Finally, I want to flag the important issue of technological innovation to business. This is one of the key areas that we're seeing transformation taking place in business. It's one of the key drivers that is propelling businesses forward. There is an opportunity also for us, as we build competitive advantage, as we work on standards, and as we work on ensuring that we're able to scale businesses, for us to ensure that inbuilt into all of that is open innovation that is also driving that quality. So there is a monitoring mechanism that allows for you to ensure that as you transition from one phase of a company's development and a business's or a sector or an industry's development, that we're constantly in that iterative orientation where we're transforming and transforming and transforming, so we're not just competitive today, because the competitive advantage of a nation today is overtaken by those of the competitive advantage of another nation tomorrow. And so we must always be iterative as we develop policy to support our countries. And so as I close, I offer my sincerest congratulations to the Board of Directors of the Barbados National Standards Institution, first, on reaching the milestone of 50 years. That is not a small thing. Secondly, for the team that has put all of this together, it has also been a considerable amount of work for all of you, and of course to the planning and production team collaborating with the BNSI from Copant. Best wishes for your continued success as you go forward in this important work. I wish you every success in your deliberations over the coming days.
Thank you, Senator Cummings, for your encouraging words. And I would also like to thank all of the other speakers for your remarks. This brings us to a conclusion of our official opening ceremony. At this time, we will take a break for 15 minutes. And I believe the time we would like the delegates to return to their seats is 10:45 local time for us to start on the official agenda of the Copant business. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, speakers. And we are officially taking a break now for 15 minutes. Good morning.
Great job. Great job.
Yes, please.
I bumped off, did you?
Yeah, I'm considering all the problems that people can't get the intervention.
Yes. Okay, let's look.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So the first course of action for the Wi-Fi, the IT is going to set the router. So everybody will be knocked off. So you can just make the announcement. Yeah. When you start.
Yeah.
In case they're not aware, they got knocked off. So they can log back in. And let's see how that goes.
Do you have US drive so I can give you my presentation because I'm having so the internet is so unstable that I
Maybe yes. Yep, yes, mistake.
Yeah.
yeah. It's very unstable. I'm getting kicked from Zoom all the time.
Okay, Elias is working with that, so they're going to set you up.
But just
Can somebody else?
No, but I think you have maybe you have a LAN connection or something that because it didn't disconnect all the
Right, this is what-
transmission. But if the laptops gets coming and going. Because I'm this is a working, this is not a conference, so we're just.
I guess I could put my laptop. Corey, could you? This panel is not on Zoom, right? It's in person.
Yeah, it's in here. Right? Yeah, I don't know. So here is the panelists here. There are Nelson, Martha, and Daniel are connected to Zoom. And here this person. The speech from Osvaldo works perfectly. That
It's
one.
fine, and then it deteriorated. Okay.
2212. Check 22.
favor, vamos a empezar. Pueden tomar sus asientos. Please, we are going to start. Can you take your seat, please? Hello. We are going to start. Sí. Ok, en primer lugar queremos pedirles disculpas por la inestabilidad del internet. Eso está causando un problema porque no pueden seguir la interpretación. La gente de TI acá me asegura que han contratado un ancho de banda más grande, tienen 5 megabytes por usuario, pero por favor o se dedican solo al Zoom y algún mail, pero nada más, porque si abren un video, si abren algo más, eso va a usar el ancho de banda y el resto no puede acceder a la interpretación. Lo voy a decir en inglés en caso de que no hayan recibido. So, first of all, we want to apologize about the Wi-Fi that is so unstable and we are not getting the translation. The IT personnel here in the Center of Conference assure me that they assign 5 megabytes per user, but please stay with your Zoom and maybe some mails, but don't do anything else because it's going to take the band. And hopefully it will work from now on if you stay using the minimum of internet in your other devices. Thank you for your understanding. En este momento están recibiendo la traducción. Are you getting the translation right now? Are you connected to the translation? Because I'm not. Sí. Javier, ¿recibes la traducción? Sí. O sea que la traducción está funcionando, la cosa es que se tiene que conectar. The translation is working, you have to connect. Okay. After we are very, I don't know if I'm going to speak in Spanish or English depending on the translation. We already have this beautiful open ceremony and we really thanks Barbadians authorities for being here and giving us the welcome. And we also heard the words of our past president, Osvaldo Petroni, and our actual president, Mauricio Céspedes. So we ask you to consider approving this resolution that the General Assembly thanks and takes note of the reports presented by Osvaldo Petroni, past president, and Mauricio Céspedes, president of Copant. Everybody's agreed? Yes, thank you. And we have another resolution, acknowledgement to BNSI and the Barbados dignitaries. So the General Assembly thanks BNSI for the words of welcome, and all organization of our band appreciates the work of the Honorable Senator Lisa Cummings, Minister of Energy and Business. It's approved. Thank you. So we can move. The roll call of delegates. I'm just calling. Yes. No translation. Because you're losing the internet connection, or because there's no translation? The chat.
Maybe it's worth it for those who need the translation to turn off the video because you are already here, so you will be reading the video on the Zoom.
So now it's better. I hear the echo, yes. Ahora, Lilian, ¿estás recibiendo o tengo que prender si prendo mi micrófono ahí me escuchas mejor? Bien, sí. ¿No hay eco? Ok, gracias. Okay, I'm gonna call only the delegation, the leaders delegation. Just raise your hand to see if we have everything present, everybody present. Sorry. So we have from Iran, Argentina. Iran, Argentina. The Bahamas, EBSQ. I don't see Dr. Brady.
Corey, Dr. Buffett will be here in the next 2 hours. Derek Martin. Dr. Buffett will be here in the next 2 hours.
So we continue with Belize. We know that Samantha is connected with us. You can use the raise hand symbol. She's online. Okay, thank you. We continue with Bolivia, Ignorca. I know you are online, but yeah, thank you, Oscar. Welcome. Brazil, ABNT, thank you. Canada, SEC, Chile, INN. Yes, you're here. I saw you. Icontech, Colombia, Cuba, NC. Yes. Ecuador, INN. Ralph, are you with us? El Salvador, Yanira. Ok, gracias, Yanira. Guatemala, Coguanor. Gracias, Sandra del Salvador. ¿De Guatemala, Coguanor, alguien? Haití, bueno. Ok, gracias, buenos días. Honduras, Sandra ya nos saludó. De México, DGN. Salvador, ¿cómo estás? Bienvenido. Jamaica, BSJ, sí, gracias. DGNTI, Panamá. Inacal, Perú, Rosario. Un saludo, bienvenida. República Dominicana. Muy bien, gracias. Santa Lucía, Bern, hola. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ezra. Trinidad and Tobago, José. Ansi, Joe. Uruguay, ¿Dónde está Fernando? No lo veo. Ah, hola. Ok, tenemos quórum de todas maneras, presidente, de los miembros activos. Vamos a mencionar a los miembros adherentes. Dean, Alemania. Petra, are you with us? China, Zach. Okay, thank you. And I see that Inen Ralph is present, Guatemala, María André is present. Thank you. España.
Aquí estamos.
Afnor, Olivier. Hello, welcome. Ruggiero from UNI sent an email that he will be joining us tomorrow. BSI, United Kingdom, welcome. Fondo Norma, Venezuela. Ok, Leonardo, gracias. IAC. IAC, no, bueno, no escucho. No sé si está Víctor o Andrea. SIM, Javier, bienvenido, gracias. Y bueno, tenemos invitados especiales presentes, IEC, ISO, CrossQ, Olivier Pera está representando a Sensenelec. Supongo que nuestros colegas de GSO han tenido problemas porque su visa llegó muy tarde. Canena también está con nosotros y Singapore Standards Council como invitados especiales. Bienvenidos a todos y muchas gracias. Ok, gracias Alexandra. Perfecto, entonces estamos en quórum.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Teniendo quórum aprobado, vamos a proceder a adoptar la agenda y en este caso, si alguien tuviera algún tema en la parte de otros, es el momento de comunicarlo. Entonces procederemos con la adopción de la agenda. Interpreto que nadie con no sé luz.
Aquí te pongo habla con ese micrófono y con esto. Ahora sí.
A ver si me escuchan. ¿Me escuchan? ¿No? ¿No? ¿Sí? ¿Ahí me escuchan? Listo. Les decía que el siguiente punto es la adopción de la agenda. Y en este punto, si alguien tiene algún tema que quisiera que tratemos en otros, sería el momento de comunicarlo. Por lo tanto, demos un espacio por si alguien tiene algún tema antes de adoptar la agenda. Ricardo.
Obrigado, presidente. Posso falar em português? Ok. Eu gostaria de colocar o seguinte tema, que nós fizéssemos uma avaliação, uma reavaliação e retornar à nossa Assembleia Geral, principalmente para presencial. Todos.
¿Alguien más con algún otro tema? Ok, pareciera que no, por lo tanto procedemos a adoptar la agenda, incluyendo el comentario que acaba de hacer Ricardo.
Bien, para la revisión de las resoluciones de esta asamblea tenemos que crear una comisión de resoluciones. He solicitado voluntarios a dedo. Espero que puedan levantar la mano para confirmar de que van a ser parte de la comisión de resoluciones. ANSI, Canadá.
We have
Chile.
We have two candidates to suggest: Jessica Rue and Meredith Shaddix.
Okay, thank you. From Canada, it's going to be Alec. From Chile, it's going to be Claudia. And I also ask Mónica Vivas from Icontech. Mónica, ¿estás ahí con nosotros? En principio lo aceptó por mail, así que vamos a tomar que sí. Ok, con estas personas tenemos el comité de resoluciones ya constituido. Sí. Me siguen diciendo que hay mucho eco. ¿Ahí está mejor? Fer, ¿está mejor ahí? Ok, perfecto. Fer, controlas por favor si se abre el micrófono, es que no necesitamos. Ok, el acta de la reunión anterior que se llevó a cabo de forma virtual por Zoom el 26 de abril fue enviada a los miembros, el borrador de acta, perdón, mediante la circular número 3 del 22, el 17 de mayo de 2022. Y se dio un plazo hasta el 7 de junio de 2022 para recibir comentarios. Terminado el periodo para recibir los comentarios, se han recibido observaciones de INE en Ecuador, SCC Canadá y del presidente en ejercicio en ese momento, que permitieron mejorar la redacción y completarla. La versión final fue enviada mediante una circular número 1722 de fecha 8 de junio del 2022 con el documento Copant 467 revisión 1. Por ende, se solicita a los miembros ratificar la aprobación del acta de la reunión de asamblea con la siguiente resolución. El acta de reunión de Asamblea General de Copant 2022, celebrada virtualmente el 26 de abril de 2022, fue aprobada sin modificaciones. ¿Aprobamos? Sí. Gracias. Y ahora pasaríamos a nuestro primer panel. Ok. Problema de conectar aquí es que no tengo acceso a mis documentos. Un segundito, quiero presentar. No, necesito. Esto es. Voy a dejar de compartir un momento para poder hacer la presentación correctamente, perdón por eso. Bien, nuestro primer panel, tenemos la suerte de tener con nosotros a los secretarios de ISO e IEC. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos y queríamos que participen en un panel, en un diálogo para comentarnos sus visiones y sus perspectivas en temas tan importantes como la innovación, cambio climático y transformación digital, pero sobre todo que nos cuenten qué planes tienen para nuestra región y cómo podemos trabajar de forma mucho más colaborativa. Para moderar este panel, quiero presentar a Roberto Montoya. Él es el director general de Icontec Colombia, es ingeniero civil, tiene un máster de administración de empresas y un certificado de General Management de Kellogg Schools. Inició como director general en Icontec en julio del 2015 y además de estar representando a Icontec en Copant, en ISO, en distintas organizaciones, también son parte de ICUNET, la red internacional de certificaciones. Entonces invito a que puedan subir por favor acá a la testera a Roberto Montoya, Sergio Mujica y Philip Metzer. Muchas gracias.
How much time do we have for the panel? So it means 12:35. Okay. Okay, so we have some flexibility to carry on with the panel. So, good morning to everyone. I'd like to express my gratitude to Cory for choosing me as a member of this panel to moderate. Also to my colleagues from Copant. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and I feel very happy to help in this role today. So I propose to develop the panel in two sections. The first part, we're going to have a conversation with Sergio and Philip. We already have some questions that we prepare in advance, and we can give between 15 to 20 minutes, depends on, for questions from the public. I mean, feel free at this moment to interact and to join us to have a more dynamic panel this morning. So let me begin with presenting both resumes, CVs. I know that most of you already know Philip and Sergio, but it's important to just to remind their professional careers at this moment. Well, this is that was for the end. You will have two lawyers with an engineer, so it's going to be tough to control these two professionals in law. So let me begin with Sergio. Sergio, as you know, is the Secretary General of ISO since July 2017, having spent 7 years at the World Customs Organization, WCO, as a Deputy Secretary General. In this role, Mr. Mujica was responsible for the design and implementation of the strategic plan of this organization. Prior to working in the WCO, he spent 15 years working for the government of Chile with the Ministry of Agriculture as well as the Ministry of Economic Affairs and as a Director General of Chile Customs. He's from Chile, of course. There is no way for him to avoid when he speaks Spanish. His accent is very clear. There's a Chilean like Sergio. He has a law degree from the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, a Jesuit university, and has a master's degree in international law from the American University in Washington, D.C. And Philip Messenger, if I pronounce right your surname. Okay, he's also a lawyer. He became IC Secretary General and CEO on February 1st, 2020, so a little bit more than 3 years, okay. In this position, he has the responsibility for the global day-to-day operations of the IEC. Prior to joining the IEC, Mr. Messenger was the Director General of the Swiss Federal Office of Communications from January the 1st, 2014, having already served as a head of this office, the telecom division, since 2007. Previously, he was the deputy to the director of Telecommunications Development Bureau of the International Telecommunications, I2, and director of the Trade Relations Divisions at the European Free Trade Association, EFTA, in Geneva. He also worked for EFTA in Brussels as senior legal officer, dealing with European economic affairs, area matters, and served as a senior corporate counsel of the United States multinational IT corporation in Amsterdam. He's a qualified Swiss attorney in law and passed his bar exam in 1992 in Bern, starting his professional career at major commercial law firms in Geneva and in London. He also holds a Master's of Arts in European Studies degree from the College of Europe, Bruges and Warsaw. So both CV officer lawyers with a wonderful and excellent careers. So let me begin with the general questions, and for both of you who wants to take the floor, feel free to do it. And actually, it's 2 in 1. So be prepared for the first question. What are the global trends you have identified in topics of innovation, climate change, and digital transformation? And what are the strategies or actions that you already implement in your organization or are implementing right now in your organization as well on these issues? So who wants to take the floor at the beginning?
Working? Yeah. Yes, it is. Okay, thank you very much, Roberto, and good morning to all of you. Really a pleasure to be here. It's been 3 years. It feels like too long ago, and it's great to reconnect in this face-to-face way. Also, a big thank you to Copant for the leadership and support that you provide to ISO. As it has been mentioned, we have our VP Finance, Osvaldo, and we also have 4 council members from this region: US, Costa Rica, Brazil, and Bolivia. We have 2 out of 3 chairs of the policy development committees. We have DEVCO in Jamaica, and we also have CASCO in the US. So that's quite a strong leadership, and I really thank you for supporting ISO in this manner. When it comes to the global trends, I think it's unavoidable to refer to the context. And what we see is big disruptions at the global level and a lot of uncertainty going on. First, in the geopolitics, we are technical organizations, but we work in the real world, and we are affected for this very divided world. Second is the the economic situation, the global economic situation where we see a slowdown as recognized by the IMF. We also see, and some countries in this region are suffering that very heavily, the inflation rate, the price of commodities, and some disruptions in the international trading system. And the third one, and probably the one that worries me the most, is the lack of trust. I normally follow the Edelmer report. This is a survey that is conducted to over 30 countries around the world. Over 30,000 people are interviewed there. And we are living in an unprecedented lack of trust. And for organizations where our value proposition is consensus building, this is very difficult. And we need to, of course, support the world with our very healthy and structured decision-making process, where we invite everyone to participate in our decisions. We work in a very transparent manner, and we work with a double layer of consensus, which I think we should be all very proud of, but we should not take it for granted. We live in a world where this is not as obvious as it used to be, unfortunately. Then, when it comes to the global trends, I think the first thing that is relevant here is to have a structured approach to foresight. At ISO, we approved 3 years ago the foresight framework, where we have conducted a trend report. It was a massive piece of work for over a year with more than 200 foresight reports analyzed. And the outcome of that study is available in the ISO website, and I really do invite you to take a look of that. We have identified 6 major sectors, including social, environment, IT, and so on, and with 45 trends. And we have also mapped those trends against our technical committees and also our standards. And that is very useful because it allows you to identify what you have in the pipeline to respond to those global trends, but equally important to identify what you don't have, our gaps. And that is the role of you. That's the role of our members to initiate technical activities to respond to those global trends. Of course, we want to complement our traditional bottom-up approach with some top-down activities, and I will talk about that later in this panel. But as I said before, I think it's very important to have this structured approach to foresight with an identification of the global trends and also with the capacity to offer to our technical community the possibility to initiate standardization activities so we arrive in a timely manner to whatever is being developed right now. So that's in general. Then, in particular to what you mentioned about climate change and sustainability. The latest report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was issued in March. Unfortunately, there are no good news there. And we see that yesterday we sent more emissions to the atmosphere than today, and tomorrow we will send even more than today. We have made a huge effort. I think that the world really is moving forward on this, but not at the right speed. And if we continue like this, we will not be able to reach our goals of 1.5 degrees increase. Some of the consequences of climate change are already there and irreversible, such as the rise in the sea levels, and some of the islands here in the Caribbean already suffered that. And other consequences will come or can be stopped if we act now. And that is a second very important message here, because whatever we do today will only have an effect in 10, 15 years. So we don't have the luxury of time here. It's a strong sense of urgency we need to work with. The third one is about digitalization. In the trends report that I referred to before, we have a number of elements identified there. Probably in the short term, the most pressing one is AI, artificial intelligence. We have seen what is going on during these days. Actually, the three organizations of the World Standard Collaboration, ITU, IC, and ISO, we issued a joint letter in response to that letter that had been issued by leaders in the IT world, asking for prudence to stop a little bit the speed in the development of the AI because of a lot of uncertainties and some questions and issues related to ethics mainly. And we believe that working together we can provide responses to some of those challenges through standardization. We also see that because of the pandemic, and this has been mentioned, there was a huge acceleration in the use of IT. We see a massive utilization of some new technologies which will also have, which are already having an impact in the way we work, in the working place. And that is very important also to be taken into account with implications in our productivity, implications in our mental health, in the well-being, our capacity to separate personal life with work life, and in a context, once again, where it was called the Great Resignation, where to retain talent in our organizations is becoming every time more and more difficult. So what we need to offer here is flexibility, and there you have the use of technology in the workplace, but flexibility with intention, because I do believe in face-to-face interaction, in real engagement. I think it's essential if we want to be creative, if we want to be productive. The second key element there is purpose. It's not just doing in a repetitive manner what you do every day. You need to understand what is the purpose of your work. And in the case of ISO, and I'm very proud of that, in our vision we have people at the very center of what we want to achieve. We want to make people's life easier, safer, and better. It's a human-centric strategy where we all need to collaborate to be able to implement. And the last one is about learning and development, especially for those who are older than 50. I'm one of those, where in the change of the demographics and in the aging of the population, we will have a revised or a different role that we used to have in the past, and learning and development becomes very, very important, especially in that segment. So those are some of the trends that I observed. I think I'll stop here. I have the ISO response to that, but I think Philippe should be able to share with us what he sees in terms of trends.
Thank you very much. And thanks also for inviting me to this event and to this panel in particular. I'd like to pay tribute and warmly thank our hosts, BNSI, and everybody involved here in Barbados. It's the first time I am in this country. It's also the first time in quite a while that I'm back in Latin America. Roberto said it, I joined the IEC in February 2020, and the rest is history almost, at least as far as face-to-face interaction is concerned, for a while, because it was very difficult for me to travel into the different regions where our membership is based. But I'm very glad also from that perspective to now start catching up. I will be back in this region in 2 months. The IEC board will meet in Mexico, and that will be an opportunity for me to travel to different members and national committees in this region. So really thank you very much for this invitation, and of course also to Copant, its new president, and all its members. I just wanted also to acknowledge that we have a regional presence, IEC, here, based in Brasilia, where our regional director, Amory Santos, who is with me here today, is covering the region to make sure we are close to your needs, we're close to the members and the stakeholders' necessities, and can respond to that, and not just design solutions on a drawing board somewhere in Geneva. Now, to the question of innovation, but also trends in innovation, but also in the green agenda, if you will, and digitization, I think you can't really separate those through three different dimensions or even strategic topics. There's a very close, I think, interrelation between the three. When I prepared myself for this panel today, I came across the latest report from UNCTAD called the Global Technology and Innovation Report. And the sort of subheading is seizing green windows. So I think wherever we look, wherever we identify strategies by actors, organizations, public and private, we see an absolute focus on the green agenda, on sustainability, and on particularly also combating climate change. So I think if I look at this through an institutional lens from IEC, we're not just looking at innovation, what's happening on innovation. I think we have to connect it to the substance that we are covering. Our core DNA in the IEC is the very strong expertise we have through all the tens of thousands of experts around the globe that you as national committees, as members, mobilize so that you have a broad connection with all your stakeholders and then bring your needs to the table so that with a consensus-based approach, as Sergio has said, we can identify what are the priorities in terms of standardization, but of course also in terms of conformity assessment. And I think we heard the minister speak today a lot about the quality infrastructure, about stepping up to the challenges that you are facing also in the environment. And I think there we really have a very strong added value. And so when we speak about innovation, we want to make sure it produces effects on the ground. I very much agree with Sergio that we have to have a process to have a sort of a radar for what is going on and what is developing. We have a slightly different setup in the IEC when it comes to foresight. We have on the one hand what we call a market strategy board, which is really trying to identify high-level trends that will bring opportunities to the IEC in terms of new standardization and conformity assessment work. But of course, sometimes we also have risks associated with those trends, and for that we have a risk framework so that we can look at opportunities and risk through appropriate channels. And then of course, ultimately all this has to build up to a strategy, and the IEC adopted a new strategy last year with 3 major pillars, and I think they all speak to those trends to which Sergio already has spoken. The first is that we are developing a digital and interconnected society because that's really the obvious megatrend that everybody is exposed to, and not everybody always has immediate answers. It often takes a process. It often takes also maybe pilots or failures to realize where you should focus on. The second is absolutely the sustainable world to support that. And I think IEC, with its core expertise in electrotechnology, electronics, and electrification, I think has a sort of a historic opportunity to become even more relevant with its members, because I think one of the fundamental keys to the greener world, to more sustainability, to the combat of climate change, of course, is decarbonization, and to that end, electrification. So I think there is a very big plate that we have to try to work off in terms of standards for electrification. I just attended last week a seminar, a discussion, for instance, in terms of global port infrastructure, and it is quite amazing, and I didn't really realize it at that point, how diverse the infrastructure still are globally for ports, how the lack of standards hampers also the sustainability of managing port infrastructures. And just to name one example, I think if you look at our very core DNA, electrification, there is an awful lot to do that today is maybe idle or is just not yet ripe for increased collaboration. And I think that is an absolute mega trend, of course, where we want to play a key role going forward. And the third pillar, and I think that's a testament to the fact that Sergio and I so often are jointly on panels, is to lead on trust, inclusion, and collaboration. Because in this gigantic venture that we're in, with all those global challenges we are facing, and where we can really contribute fundamentally as global standards organizations, we are still not capable just individually by doing that on our own. We have to collaborate, particularly also on digitalization. ISO and the IC are currently working on a very ambitious and a very long-term program of a new way of standardizing. We call it smart standards, in terms of precisely how in the future we can provide the content of standards, but also the conformity assessment services in a digital way. I think practically every sector is experiencing that, the challenges, but also the opportunities for digitalization. The customer needs evolve. Sergio mentioned AI. We know that machine reading, machine interpretation, and then hopefully one day also machine updating of standards is something that there's a strong need for that in the industry, but through that also for other stakeholders. And I think it's a key example why the aspect of collaboration is so important. We can't do everything with a mathematical formula. We can't do everything just by having great engineering work. Ultimately, we are in a people business, in an international organization, and it's absolutely important that we bring together the different mindsets. I think the diversity, as in we have seen also in many other organizations, strengthens organization. I can maybe mention one thing in the context of also innovation, but also in terms of even digitization, which is the question of gender responsiveness of standards. IEC and ISO last year together launched a guide to also take that into account. So I think when we look at the global scene in terms of megatrends, innovation is something we are all chasing as well as we can, and it's never good enough. The key challenge we have in that as well is speed. We know that it takes time to get global consensus, but we have, through new digital tools as well and new approaches, I think an opportunity to also speed up a bit. Of course, ultimately, but if you want a solution that is lasting, that is sustainable, that is globally accepted, you have to invest. And that means also an investment of time. But nonetheless, I think we cannot ignore that the pace of change, technological change, of course the climate change, not to mention that, is accelerating. And we as organizations have to put the right framework and the right processes in place to reflect that. And I think that is an ongoing task. It's not just something where we can say we have now done a nice new governance review and we have a new system that's all going to catch it. We have to continuously question ourselves, and maybe that's the last point for the introductory round I wanted to emphasize. We had a highly interesting discussion with our market strategy board last week, and it was quite obvious that yes, we are very bottom up. We are member-based organizations. It is the members, the national committees, who bring work proposals to the tables. But I think we have to think also how we can inject maybe more from a more holistic perspective, not just with vested interests in mind sometimes, because that can also hamper us, that somebody doesn't want to go for a more efficient system because it would affect the business case of that stakeholder. So I think we need also to reflect further how we can maybe inject more sort of ideation at the broader level. And that is maybe also sometimes challenging a bit specific interests of specific stakeholders. Because I think only through that can we follow up in a more thorough way on the new requirements, specifically when we speak about sustainability.
Thank you for your point of view regarding these global trends. We also heard from Philip what is going on internally in your IC organization, your 3 pillars. So I would like to ask you the same to Sergio. What is going on in ISO regarding sustainability? Because at the end, I agree with you, these 3 topics you have to confront in a global vision. There is no way to think in innovation in one pillar, not related to digital transformation and climate change. They have to be together. So what's going on in ISO regarding those 3 issues?
Okay, for me, there are three different angles that should be tackled here in terms of innovation. The first is, how do you ensure you have a strategy that would transform your organization to remain relevant in this context of global trends and challenges? And I remember vividly that great conversation and at the ISO annual meeting, that debate. Chantal was there, Javier was there as well, discussing whether or not we have a transformational enough strategy so we ensure relevance of the organization in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And I have to say that I'm very proud of the ISO strategy, and I think it's really transformational without losing the essence of what we do. We have people at the center of our strategy, and we believe in certain values that are non-negotiable. I'm talking about consensus, I'm talking about transparency, I'm talking about diversity, I'm talking about capacity building. But then there are very specific projects that are really transforming the organization, and I want to highlight that because we also need to manage change. We need to manage the pace or the velocity of our change, and we need to ensure that we don't leave anyone behind in some of those projects that were mentioned by Philippe. Let me give you a couple of examples. SMART. People tend to believe that SMART is about technology. SMART is about identifying what our users need and to be able to respond to those needs so they can benefit from our standards. And in the new phase of our SMART program, we are moving to a pilot-centric approach where we will put in action everything that we learned in the three groups we had before, use cases, business model, and technical solutions. But it's very important to understand that we have SMEs that will benefit from SMART. A lot of developing countries will benefit from SMART, as well as highly sophisticated users of our standards as well. On that, I think a very good news here is that DevCo has created, under the leadership of the DevCo chair from this region, has created a working group on SMART to ensure that developing countries are also in the driver's seat for that project. And this is not a matter of putting 1, 2 more representatives from developing countries in the board that leads this project. It's about giving real drive, taking into account the needs of SMEs, developing countries, and so on. And the other one is online standard development, where we will transform ourselves, including technology, in our core business, which is the development of standards. Those two key emblematic projects are not in coordination with the IEC, are in co-creation with the IEC. It's the highest level of collaboration that we can have on this. And I really do believe that we are in a great moment of collaboration between the two organizations with a lot of trust, where we are transforming the way we do things, but we are doing it together. Then when it comes to standardization, standard development, we have a couple of very transformational projects. Once again, one on new and revised deliverables under the leadership of Javier, where we will question, where we will challenge our main deliveries. Today, we only speak about international standards. We have other deliverables that are underutilized, but maybe we don't have the right deliverable today available to respond to our users' needs. Maybe we need to test more in a good enough approach. We don't need to create the perfect standard to release it to the world. We can go with this good enough version and then improve it as we go along. We need to challenge the time we take to develop our standards, as mentioned by Philippe, without compromising our core values. And then the final dimension here, as we transform the organization, is how do we complement our traditional bottom-up approach with some top-down activities. We value the initiation of standardization activities through the initiative of our members, because you are the ones connected to the ground, to the real economy, to the real world. And we don't want to create solutions looking for problem. We need that you understand the challenges of your industry, your stakeholders, and you initiate those standardization activities. However, sometimes with that approach, we lose the big picture because there are some global trends that are going on, and we need to ensure that we as an organization are responding to those global trends. One of them being sustainability, and I will refer to that in a second. So how do we create the processes, the deliverables, and also the collaboration with the technical community, because we don't want to bypass our technical community. We need to work with them to make sure that we respond to those global needs. Now about sustainability. You approved, the ISO members approved the London Declaration not that long ago in 2021, where we made a promise, a commitment to the world to accelerate all our activities related to sustainability and climate change, to do our very best effort to be part of the solution and to support policymakers in the implementation of their decisions. And the beauty of the London Declaration, or the ISO Climate Commitment, as it's called today, is that it's very actionable. And we have a very concrete action plan to make it happen in reality. We start with our core business, with the standardization activities, and all of this under the leadership of the TMB, because we need to do it together with the TMB. We have conducted a mapping exercise where we identified the most relevant standards that organizations, private sector, business, government can use today to comply with their commitments related to climate change. ISO has 25,000 standards. We cannot take 25,000 standards and throw it to the world saying, use them wisely. We need to be a lot more focused and to be able to tell them, this is what you need. This is the package of standards that can help you deliver on your climate commitment. And we have identified a subset of those 800, and even with a more focus on even a smaller group, where we want to incorporate climate science. This is with all due respect to experts and engineers. But many times what we see in our own technical committees that experts don't like being advised. Because they are experts. They are experts. So we need to provide them with expertise, climate-related expertise, so we can look at our standards with a different angle to make sure that those standards do respond to the urgent needs related to climate change. And all of that is being done under the leadership of the TMB, and this is key, in collaboration with the technical committees. We cannot lose the technical community in this journey. Second key element is a strategic partnership. This is by definition an area where we will not succeed if we work in isolation. And I have received a very specific mandate from my board of directors, 4 council members present in this room, to engage with other organizations that are working in this field to make sure that we achieve those strategic partnerships. I'm talking about ISSB, I'm talking about GHGP, Greenhouse Gases Protocol, I'm talking about SBTI, Science-Based Target Initiative, I'm talking about UNFCCC, the United Nations organization responsible for climate change, and organization to be identified in the area of carbon capture. And finally, on this area is the indispensable role of members. We need the members to be the key player in the implementation of our commitments related to climate. So one thing that I have written to you in my monthly newsletters that I send is that we need champions, climate champions from the members, so we create a network of climate experts and passionate people that through standardization we can address those global challenges. And also, we need you to talk to your national delegations that will be attending the conference of the party, of the Paris Agreement. Last year, we had a very strong representation from our governors and our members. Chantal was there, Javier was there, we had our VP Finance, we had our VP Policy, Christophe, we had the ISO president, so a very strong representation. But there are limits in the number of people we can take to the conference of the parties. And what can be really important here is that we combine our efforts. You engage with your national delegations, and you go to the COP as part of your national delegation, and we increase the ISO presence or the standardization organizations' presence at the conference of the parties.
Yes, Roberto, if I may quickly bounce off maybe 3 points that Sergio picked up, and where I think to sort of give a complete picture, I wanted to add something. It's on the question of the concrete work program, if you will, in terms of actual contributions to combating climate change. That, I think, inherently is linked with the question of partnering. You mentioned already a number of organizations. I can add a few maybe as well, which I believe are of interest to the membership of both organizations. And then quickly also on the digitalization and the question of leaving no one behind, because I think it's a fundamental point, and we never communicate enough about it. So we try to step that up, and ultimately it needs a direct engagement with all the members, because the needs are different. On the question of work programs, specifically from an IEC perspective, I've mentioned the electrification potential, which is huge, where we can still do much more and provide standards for areas which seem obvious, and suddenly you realize there is no global approach and it's not efficient. The second one is, and there I mentioned that there are a number of stakeholders who would be interested, from port infrastructure providers, etc., to get to IEC. And they ask us, where is our mailbox? Where can we come with a proposal? The second dimension I want to mention is also a very important one, which is energy efficiency. We have reignited a bit our contacts, which have suffered a bit with the International Energy Agency over the past years, to try and also get a better showcasing of IEC standards when it comes to energy efficiency. The IEA is now quite active in that. They have developed a program. They will have a number of events this year, and we think that this has a great potential for the IEC work as well. And the third element, that's looking at it from a conformity assessment side. We have currently a very intensive program of carbon footprint activities. So we often have a total lack of evidence, of data, what carbon footprint actually is in all those different fields of electrotechnology, electronics. We have now been developing, very much also under the impetus of our market strategy board, a verification service, which we'll be launching shortly, which we can offer through one of our conformity assessment systems, the IEC Q system for quality for verification of electronic components, quality of electronic components, and we can offer there for the future a service which is, we believe, is unique and which can apply across many electrotechnology sectors in actually verifying what the carbon footprint of all those components really is. And I think that is a concrete field now where we are trying to provide a service for the future, which of course will help then also in turn our work, because I think we really have an increasing connection between the standards experts and the conformity assessment experts, because it is necessary if you think about your longer term strategy and also your longer term business model. I mean, none of our organizations work for free. We are non-profit, but we have to have resources to do all that. And I think we are well advised to think quite far ahead. We have a task force currently under our president, who is leading it himself, on how we can look at the long-term sustainable business model, and of course all the aspects of sustainability, of digital components and delivery modes flow into that. And in connection with the carbon footprint, I wanted to emphasize the importance of another organization that I think Sergio has not yet mentioned. It's called IRENA. It's the International Renewables Energy organization based in Abu Dhabi, It is a full-fledged intergovernmental organization which is very much pushing the bill on renewable energies. They have a strong focus, for instance, on hydrogen. If we look at hydrogen, it's another excellent opportunity for collaboration between what ISO does and what IEC does. ISO has many standards in the field of hydrogen. And then, specifically with regard to green hydrogen, there's a strong interest of IRENA to use standards and to get the conformity assessment services around that. And of course, that's where IEC can step in through our system on explosive atmospheres. They have a core knowledge on hydrogen. The IRENA is very interested in that. And again, this is not something IEC does on its own. We use ISO standards largely for that as well. So I think another very specific field where we're collaborating in concrete terms, but where we realize more and more how important it is to team up with other players, other organizations. IRENA was probably not aware to the fullest degree in the past what we can offer in terms of portfolios, standards portfolios. We really want to avoid that they suddenly start developing standards on their own because of a lack of knowledge, and then create overlaps and friction and contradiction in standards. So I think that is another field where currently a lot of focus, energy and work goes into on the IEC side. And then lastly, on the digitalization question of inclusion. I think Sergio has said that we're very much in a pilot phase right now. And this is not just to take the best in class, those who are far ahead in their thinking or even in their resources, but it's very much also giving any national committee, in the case of the IEC and NSB in your case, the opportunity to come with their needs or come with their questions or come with their pilot cases. So we're really trying to collect different diverse pilots. What we've also seen is that there are very interesting digital solutions in that context when you speak about digital standards of the future and identifying potential through some countries, I think call it wizards, where somebody in a national committee or in an NSB who doesn't really yet have the full visibility can access a tool that pinpoints relevant areas where digitalization could play a part in their own development. Because I think I've seen this in telecommunications in a past life. We have opportunities of leapfrogging more than we think. So it's not so that we're just in a world where the haves have everything, they develop everything and they do what they want. Often the newcomers, those who are not yet at the same level of development on a project or generally speaking economically, they can leverage new technologies and leapfrog and go to an infrastructure that is more modern than maybe a big, heavy, existing legacy system that has to be transformed. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. That's an experience of mine. We have a leapfrogging opportunity, but it requires a permanent communication and openness to the ideas and the needs that they can be voiced by everyone.
Thanks, Philip. Before moving to the next question, let me say, Sergio, that as you said before, from now I will take your advice. I mean, as an engineer, I will take the advice of the lawyers. So don't worry, I will follow you. I will follow you. That's true. Okay, you said you don't want anyone behind in any matter. Okay, so coming to the region, coming to the Pan American region, to the Caribbean, to the South America, to the Central America, in concrete, in a practical way, what are you doing right now in those issues? I mean, you mentioned some of them, projects. I don't know if you want to make like a zoom a little bit just to refer concrete plans in these three issues, I mean, in sustainability for the Copant region, and particularly for the NSBs that we are right now here, okay?
Now? Yeah. First thing to mention is the regional engagement policy that was just confirmed by the ISO Council now in February, because in this region we have a regional coordinator, Talita. You are best friend for everyone. She's coming from ABNT, Brazil, and we have this single window approach where anyone in the region can go to Talita and she will, address the need if she can personally or point to the right person or to the right door within the ISO system. So that regional engagement policy has been very successful, I believe. We conducted a survey to the members in November and December, and the result that we got is really remarkable. 98% of the ISO members were supportive or very supportive of the regional engagement policy, which I think is very good news. And this is something that we discussed many times in this very region and used to be a kind of divisive topic. Now I think we can all be happy to have something that makes sense to everyone in the organization. That's number one. Then about some of these key projects, Philippe already mentioned SMART. We can take on board some of the pilots that you might be interested in having. We also invite you to participate through the DEFCO working group in this project in particular, the SMART. Then in the case of the climate commitment, two things to mention. The first one, our network of climate champions. We have so far Colombia, well done Roberto, Costa Rica, Ecuador, and Peru. But the region is quite larger than that. So please do. If you're passionate about climate change, if you believe that standards can make the difference, please ask your staff to join this network of climate champion. It's really necessary. And the second one is what I just mentioned. Engage with your national delegations, with your ministries of foreign affairs, of ministries of environment, to see whether there is an opportunity for you to join your national delegation that will participate at the conference of the parties. So those are very two concrete initiatives. The third one is the action plan for developing countries that you are very well familiar with. You know that the DEFCO chair is from this region. We have the Leadership and Management Development Program that will take place next week in Bolivia, La Paz. Jose Duran, thank you so much for that. We're really happy to be there. We believe that we need to invest in our leaders in all the regions. And for that, we have created this program that has been so far very successful. Then we have some tools, good standardization practice, where you can use this kind of diagnostic tool in all the value chain related to standardization and to compare that to your national reality to identify gaps or areas of improvement where we can support that process. Then we can also support the creation of national standardization strategies. You cannot be, nobody can be everywhere. We have over 800 technical committees and subcommittees plus many, many working groups. So all in all, over 3,000 groups working as we speak. We cannot be everywhere. So it's really of the essence that you identify your national priorities and you prioritize your contribution to technical committees in those areas. And for that, you need a national standardization strategy. Today, INEN in Ecuador is launching the national standardization strategy, and congratulations, Ralph. So those are some of the concrete programs that can benefit this region. And the other one is this sponsorship program. This is really important. Developing countries can benefit from that sponsorship from ISO Central Secretariat to participate in up to 3 technical committees that are a priority for your country. Because if our value proposition is about globally relevant standards to respond to global needs, we really need to have everybody's voice in the standard development process. It cannot be an effort of 3, 5, 10 big countries. We really need to have a global conversation to ensure that we come up with a globally relevant standard.
Would you like to mention something additional, Philip? It's fine. Okay. So before moving to a more concrete question, I'm going to maybe, okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I think just since I thought you were going to ask me a more specific question, because of course, if I look at Copant, IEC is not in the same institutional position or has not the same institutional setup as ISO, because the national standards bodies are, per definition, the ISO members. In the IEC, we have the principle of national committees where all the stakeholders have to be represented. And of course, in many countries and also in this region, the NSB plays a very important role in hosting those national committees or in facilitating the interaction on the other. I mean, I've said it yesterday, but not everybody was participating, of course, unfortunately, at the reception for those delegates who are online. We have, of course, the approach of regional centers. So we do have a foothold in all the continents with offices, IEC offices. For the Latin America region, we have Amaury Santos based in Sao Paulo, covering the entire region, being very connected and very close to the members, to the ground, to the needs. And we have, of course, looking at the American continent, also an office in Boston, and then we have other offices in Nairobi, in Sydney, and in Singapore. When it comes to the mechanism, I think also as a secretariat, we changed our setup somewhat already almost 3 years ago now, shortly after I changed, so that we put in place a management structure which allows us, for Amaury and his colleagues in the regions, to be much more connected amongst themselves, but also with us in Geneva, with the senior management team, so that we can really elevate any particular needs that need our attention at our level to our weekly meetings. So I think we have a policy of thinking globally, connecting the different parts of the organization, and then being very much looking to Amaury as far as this region is concerned, and of course also our colleagues in North America, to bring the needs early on to the table so that we can devise specific programs, specific services, training. We have an academy where we provide a lot of know-how transfer also online. We just had a discussion yesterday with Amaury, with CrossQ, discussing specifically, you know, what would be needed in the coming months, also in terms of input from the IEC. So I think we believe strongly in that direct connection on the ground through the regions. In addition, of course, we have also an affiliates program. I think it's very important for this region because many of the countries in this part of the world are affiliates in the IEC, and that's a program we are continuously reinvigorating, strengthening. We now also have expanded the mentorship program that we have between different countries, so that you can also, you know, sort of match or mix and match different categories of members. You have full members, you have associate members and affiliates, and there can be bilateral mentorship, mentor-mentee relations that go across the categories, because we have seen the benefits that the affiliate program produces in many countries, and certainly if anybody picks this up for the first time today, we're very happy to you know, respond to that even more in the future. So when we look at regional aspects, I think that's the overall picture. And then, as always, we're a substantive organization. We need expertise, we need experts, and we need experts from all walks of life, all parts of the world. And I would like just simply to encourage all the national committees as well to continuously press for work, new work proposals, but also for experts. I try to do my contribution at my end when it comes, for instance, to composing task forces that the board is setting up, or special processes. I'm really trying also to be inclusive in the regional sense. I could tell you a few examples where I had to fight quite hard to convince the employers of those individuals from your region, and from other regions as well, but just have examples in mind from this region, because it's not always an obvious benefit for the employers. And I think that's a challenge we have across the board, that we really get the best experts to the table from all the around the globe.
Thanks, Philip, for your remarks. Taking into account the time, I'm going to make a couple of questions, one for for Philip and the other one for Sergio, and then we can open the floor to the public. I think Cory has some questions. I don't know if for Zoom they can send it or not, but anyway, we can open for the people who is right with us. Both mention SMART joint project, but for some people, and you said that you want all the members to be involved, to take advantage of the results of this project. But for some people, digital transformation can increase the gap between standard bodies in developed countries and developing countries. What can be done from IEC, this is a question for you, José Philip, to prevent that and hopefully to reduce the gap?
Yeah, I'm not unfamiliar with the concept of a digital gap. I think whenever you have digital technologies, and if I think back in my days when I was more looking after connectivity in particular, I think it's always a challenge because you have front runners, you have stakeholders who are very advanced in their thinking and also in their, I think, in their resource situation, of course. So I think it's something where we constantly need an exchange and a dialogue with a membership, where we sometimes have to go back to the drawing board and maybe change something in the design of the way the program is set up. I would really like to emphasize this is not a two-year project, and in 2 years you have a few European national committees who are doing smart standards and the rest of the world doesn't. This is something much more ambitious. We're really in fundamental design and piloting work now, and so the process is going to be lasting over many years, which I think also gives us an opportunity to try and collect and solicit as many cases or use cases from countries with different needs, with different levels of development on an ongoing basis. It's working. So I think it requires a permanent exchange. There will always be a need to maybe showcase something where not everybody can immediately contribute. But as I said earlier, I think we need to also think about leapfrogging opportunities where it could be interesting for a particular country, for instance, to just maybe pause and wait until a solution that has been elaborated through a pilot, for instance, is on the table, can be applied easily, because digital solutions sometimes at least facilitate the adoption and facilitate the involvement, because you have a lot of automation, you have a lot of also artificial intelligence that does a lot of work where you maybe don't have the resources. Then you become more a user of that. I mentioned examples of wizards earlier, and I think that is an element we should keep in mind when we go about this program. But it's not something very short term, it's much more longer term. And I think when pressure points emerge for particular countries or particular regions, they will be visible and they will be felt through the governance, and they will be escalated through the governance, and remedies will have to be sought.
Thank you. Thanks, Philip. Just a final question for Sergio, and then we open the floor for questions from the public. Let me go back to the three main topics that we already talked this morning: innovation, digital transformation, and climate change. And what do you think, Sergio, what is your point of view about that those issues can be a matter of interest of big companies, of big organizations? What happened with the small and medium enterprise? How standardization can help to those small, medium, like in Latin America, to really take the advantage to really to get the benefits of the standards, because I mean, from my point of view, it's true that some standards are right for a big company, but it's very difficult for a small and medium company to implement and to certify, even though. Yeah, go ahead.
I think this question is related to the one you asked to Philip as well. In the case of SMART, imagine that in your phone, an SME here in Barbados could have an guide with very simple language about how to implement one standard. That is what Philippe called like the wizard. That can be done. And it's not highly sophisticated technology. Almost everyone has a cell phone and could have a guide to implement a standard. So that would be something very useful, I believe, and that we call SMART. Second, with SMART, we are not planning to change our portfolio and to smartify everything we have. It's just another layer to increase the offer we make to our users. Some of them will be interested in SMART, others will not. So we are enlarging, basically, our portfolio, our offer to the users. And number three, we are in the final stage of developing a tool, a diagnostic tool, to assess the maturity level in IT, in digital transformation for all our members. Because in this caliber of project, you need to ensure not only that you offer a high quality product, you also need to make sure that you manage the transition, what is called change management. And for that, assessing the maturity level on IT of all of our members can be very useful for us to be able to provide the necessary support.
Thanks, Philip and Sergio, for your questions, for this very interesting conversation. So, Corey, we can open for questions to the public. If who wants to start, please raise your hand. I think we have a microphone. Please, at the back. We have a. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, my compliments to the panel. I think Roberto and Sergio and Philippe did an excellent job of providing a stimulating conversation. I have what I would call a comment, and it has to do more than a question. It has to do with a trend that I see coming, and I think most of us in this room probably see coming, that is probably not as strategic as innovation or climate change or digital transformation, but perhaps is just as impactful. And that has to do with what the future holds for the standardization model. How will we be meeting in the future? For example, we've learned over the last 3 years that the pandemic has a silver lining. We've learned that we can operate successfully in a virtual environment. And so what that means is that most of us who are coming back to work are not coming back to work on a full-time basis, or at least not in the office in the same way that we once did. We're also finding out that our stakeholders are asking more and more opportunities to meet virtually. And so, for example, I read once that it is very easy to run a face-to-face meeting. It is very easy to run a virtual meeting, but it is a significant challenge to run a hybrid meeting. And I think that's an issue that we all have to address in the future. We also have to address other implications, such as real estate. Many of us, for example, I have the privilege of serving as the chairman of the board for ANSI. Our largest office in New York City's lease is going to expire next year. So the question is, how do we predict what will be our footprint in 2024? And what kind of an office facility should we have? And I think those are all trends that, while they may be more tactical than the strategic trends that you've all addressed, I also think it's something that we're all going to have to face as we move into the future. So, thank you for the comment.
Thanks for your question and for your comments. Who wants to answer the question? Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I would definitely agree with Phil that this is a challenge. But I also think that, you know, I'm coming from a bottom-up country, if you will. I'm working in a bottom-up organization. We're member-based. And there is and it's not a precise science how you interact and how you meet and how you produce results. I'm always an optimist. I'm always a believer that we can become more efficient and that we can use new technology to our advantage. But yes, there are moments where you feel the resistance, and then as well you have I think a discussion and a determination through the governance processes how you actually do the work for certain types of work, for certain situations. But ultimately, I strongly believe that we should leverage what we have learned, and that we go towards a future which is more flexible in a sense, but also more inclusive and more agile. And that doesn't mean to say that there are not situations where you have to mandate one or the other working method. But I'm always a bit hesitant to issue top-down directives to a broad community, a very diverse community, global community, if there's not a real need for it, because ultimately we must never forget that it's the members, it's our armies of experts who do our work and who produce our results and who offer our services. So my comment would be that of flexibility, mental flexibility, but also institutional flexibility, and ultimately a democratic decision-making process that will take care of hopefully the toughest challenges.
One additional comment on top of what was mentioned by Philippe, it's about what is our ambition as an organization in terms of carbon footprint. And that is very relevant because we're doing a lot, transforming ourselves in our standard development process, our deliverables, our engagement with other organizations. But we're also supposed to be a role model to the world. In my opinion, the ambition cannot be anything less than net zero. And net zero means removing everything that is possible and only accept what is residual. The issue here is that in our way of working, we need to develop not only standards, we also need to develop a relationship, a community. And that many times is the case for a technical committee. So a level of physical engagement, in my opinion, is of the essence. But what is the sweet spot? What is that minimum? What is that baseline? For that, what was mentioned by Philippe, I fully agree that needs to be decided on a case-by-case basis, but we also need leadership, top-down definitions in some cases, and on that TMB and SMB are working together, defining some of method of work, future method of work. But in terms of ambition, I repeat myself, should be nothing less than net zero.
Roberto, Canadá pidió
Okay.
CrossQ y tengo dos preguntas en el...
Okay, so we can go Canada, CrossQ. I think also Joe is asking for has a question, and Corey has 2 questions from a virtual member, right? So we have 5 questions. So let's move very concrete, just because we are almost. And Indocal as well. Okay, let's try if we can manage to finish with on time with all these questions.
Can I suggest that you collect all the questions and then we answer all together? As you prefer, you are the moderator.
Well,
I don't mind.
Go ahead with your question.
Just a suggestion linked to hybrid work. I think that with all of us having had to go through this in the past 3 years, we could probably develop a wonderful international workshop agreement or guidelines on this that the international community can benefit from. So we're supposed to be in the standards business. This is going to be needed forever now, well, for many, many years to come. I think we could probably do something together. Just a suggestion. My question is to Philippe, actually. I was very happy to hear about the verification program you're suggesting, right? My hope is that because carbon footprint is not typically in the skills and expertise, I would say, of IEC, make that there's work in collaboration with ISO, because carbon footprint right now standards come from the work of TC207, SC7, etc., which we lead. So I'm super happy that you are working on verification, but if you're working on verification of carbon footprint, Casco has developed Casco ISO and IEC, have developed great standards for that. Please use the expertise that resides within the ISO community. And I'm super psyched by the green hydrogen. I think it's a great idea to connect it to HAZLOC, and we'll do that in Canada. Thank you.
Fine. Go ahead.
Quizás puedo aprovechar, la pregunta de Fabián Yaxic de Brasil está muy relacionada con lo que acaba de decir Chantal para un poco.
Okay, go ahead with this.
Bueno, él dice que como por la experiencia positiva de las reuniones virtuales para una mayor participación, principalmente en los países menos desarrollados, permitir que todas las reuniones de diferentes comités técnicos de ISO e IEC podrían mantenerse todavía presenciales virtuales. Y además pregunta cómo están los trabajos coordinados entre la IEC e ISO para los temas discutidos, ¿no? Innovación, inteligencia artificial, transformación, temas ambientales y cambios climáticos. Bueno, quizás
Cory,
más un comentario que una
it's more a comment than a question. Okay, so please, it's your turn.
Thanks very much. So, Sergio, you were talking a lot about trends in learning and development and workplace opportunities. You know, the young adults of today, they appear to be chasing more happiness, more life experiences, and more freedom as they grow and they learn and develop, to the extent that they don't seem to be chasing careers. They don't want to be fitting into a job. The young talent now appears that the job has to fit into their lifestyle. So if you're seeing that kind of trend internationally and maybe in ISO and IEC, you know, what strategies are you guys using that we could probably learn from to try to attract and retain young talent in this old traditional standardization business, where this young talent, especially in a hybrid environment, they want jobs to fit into their lifestyles and not the other way around? Any ideas on talent attraction and retention and that trend, especially in a digitized economy now?
Maybe if I can answer a bit provocatively, we should of course make sure that going forward the standardization and conformity assessment business is not the good old business it used to be. Because we see, and as you know, we have a program called the IC Young Professionals Program, which I think is very successful. We have an increasing, not just an interest in the program itself, but really an increasing interaction between the different stakeholders and the different also leadership bodies inside, governing bodies inside the IC with the young professionals, and I think we should definitely be challenged. We had in our General Assembly in San Francisco, for the first time, a direct interaction with the young professional leaders who had, with their around 100 young professionals for the whole week, discussed matters that are relevant to them from their experience, and then they put that to the General Assembly, to the members, and challenge them. And that's, I think it's on this spirit that we want to continue. It's not just to have a bit of fun and interaction and challenge each other. It's very much about bringing the new ideas to more fruition and let them drizzle down the system and hopefully transform it through that way. Because many of the young professionals, they are digital natives. They see how standards can be used, but they also see limits, and they see what new products and services in the standardization and conformity assessment world should really aspire for. And so we have an increasing engagement. It's not just to leave the young professionals amongst themselves and give them a platform, that's great, but they have to mainstream ultimately very much. So that would maybe be my immediate reaction. The world is never perfect. We know we have a bit of a lack at the moment of connection with academia. I think this is something we're also discussing at the level of the World Standards Cooperation with Sergio and ITU. where probably we can do more. Ultimately, the national committees play a very important role there. But I think it's really about being transformative. I can tell you I was a little bit embarrassed in one of the meetings, technical meetings in San Francisco, where somebody who had been doing a technical work for 30 years essentially told these young and hopeful professionals that, well, they first had to get 20 years under their belt before they could really make a significant contribution. And of course, it's precisely the opposite, because we have a unique opportunity, I think, to become more relevant. But if we have an attitude of we know it all and it's going to be the way it has been, then I think we're going to disappear. So we can't afford that.
I think the IC YPP Young Professional Program has been extremely successful, and I attended myself to the IC general meeting in San Francisco, and I have to tell you that direct conversation between young professionals and CEOs was a wonderful experience. It was really a learning experience for me. It was very, very interesting. At ISO, we want to copy what is possible of that very successful project, but also the priority we have received from the members is to create toolkits that we can share with the members so you implement those kind of projects at the national level. Because it's very, very of the essence, actually, because it is you at the national level who appoint experts to attend technical committee meetings. So it's very important that you have programs at the national level to engage with young professionals. And the third angle is what was already mentioned by Philippe, engagement with academia as well.
Thanks. So, Joe, it's your turn. Go ahead.
Well, I requested my floor at a different issue, which was development of people as well as the application of facilities that we need to modify and change because of...
Joe, would you mind close to your microphone so we can hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's much better.
As much as you can? Is it good still? Okay. But I said I raised my hand when we were talking about how to deal with activities related to a change in the way we work. Not working at the office, we're working at home, and there are many, many ways you can get successful results in doing that. And first, let me answer that question, because we are in the middle of relocating our largest office in a new location, and we've had direct work done with at least 16 to 18 bodies that develop standards internationally, nationally, locally. And then we've also had input from various other sources to understand what it is that we will need to be working on and dealing with in the future, and how do we handle that. And quite frankly, the two things that come to our mind based on all the search we have done, it's been going on for 8 months, is that you need to remain flexible. Flexibility is the #1 success tool that we will have, because people will change, the developments will go in a different way, the determinations of what people want to do, especially the young community, is very important for us to know and learn and to be prepared for, and making adjustments as we go forward, because several are looking for a life that is joyful and at the same time do a little bit of work on the side. But many more are looking to develop careers and want to be successful as they go forward. So we have to learn how to deal with that. And then looking at the size of the facilities in which we are, especially if you have large commitment financially on that, you have to decide whether you want to stay there, you want to go to another one, you have to do cross-analysis of the cost as well as the benefit of that change if you make a change. So I think we'll need to learn as we go. It's not a situation that's going to become very obvious very fast. It's going to keep adjusting and learning itself. As the economies become fully what they used to be 2-3 years ago, we'll get closer and closer to the processes that we embraced, and perhaps learn even more to improve them because of what we have seen in the last 2 years or so in how people work. And quite frankly, the ability of people to be used in the future as effective leaders of the future would require us to pay as much attention to younger people as we do to the older. In fact, the opposite is true. I think we need to do more in that area and make sure that we are able to cover all the needs that would evolve, because the technologies are going to change. The speed with which they change are going to continue to grow. They'll need to learn a lot more of things. They'll need to learn about how to interact with people that they haven't had a chance to interact, because remember, for 3 years, a great majority of the people have not been socially interactive. So we'll have to get that adjusted for the future. So there are a lot of things to do, and I'll just say, I keep repeating, flexibility, flexibility, flexibility probably will give you the best chances of all times. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but that's what we're learning in our 8 months of very deep analysis from perspective of both domestic and international activities. I don't know if you guys, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Is that too general, too easy, or are there more things we're missing? And we're looking at all angles.
Well, I can only agree, Joe. I think what I said earlier, maybe with slightly different terminology. I spoke about bottom-up. I spoke about the flexibility, the agility in the organization. I think that's what I think we should do. That's what we're trying to do in the Secretariat as well. I mean, sometimes, yes, you need to take a few decisions which are not always popular, but I think we are trying to be flexible as an employer. We can also expect flexibility from the staff, and in my experience, that normally works. That's a deal that people like to enter into.
I fully agree with Philippe. I think this is a joint venture, if you wish. Flexibility, yes, but on both sides, and also flexibility with intention. In a workplace, you need to build an organizational culture, and that requires certain level of physical presence, in my opinion, at least. So where is the sweet spot? That will depend on each organization, what kind of arrangement you have. But to me, it's not only flexibility, it's a flexibility with intention. Remember that the second key driver for an employer today, for an employee today, is number one, flexibility, but second, purpose. What is it what you are contributing to the world? And to create that, I think a level of physical engagement is necessary.
Thanks. So, Cory, the two questions.
Ralph, Asaf, ¿puedes tomar la palabra, por favor? Ralph, te escuchamos. No se escuchan en la salón. A ver, nuevamente puedes probar. No, por el momento. Entonces voy a leer tu pregunta para no perder mucho el tiempo. Perdón por esto. Lo que pregunta Ralph es si las normas en todos lados, certificaciones para los pequeños emprendedores y pymes es complejo. Los invito a pensar en guías tanto ISO como IEC para invitar a los pequeños y microempresarios a formar parte del mundo de la calidad. El salto es demasiado grande para cumplir una norma cuando no se conoce de ello. Los países en vías de desarrollo, por ejemplo, hablando de América Latina, el mayor motor productivo son las micro y las pymes, y la ISO 9001 es inalcanzable para ellos.
No, there's, but we understood. I mean, it's related to the question that I asked before regarding how can we involve small and medium enterprises and not only big companies in this world of standardization. So I think we have the answer, but I don't know if you want to add something else.
I will also support the idea of creating guides for the implementation of the standards. And it's not only machine-readable standards, I always say we need to maintain that human-readable standards as well. And sometimes we talk in a very technical and difficult language to understand, in particular by SMEs. So guides to help implementation from SMEs and micro enterprises as well, I think is a very good way to go.
If I can just quickly add to that, yes, I would really say that, even go maybe a step further, the reality is that many of those standards are not really accessible because they are too complex. Now, of course, if you have good digital processes to digest standards, that can help SMEs as well. You can use a machine for that. You don't have to start reading 1,000 pages of a standard that you do not understand as an outsider. So I think what we're trying to offer as well through Academy is precisely that, facilitating the understanding of the product. We have also some processes where what we call new revenue generation, where we're trying to provide added value so that it makes it more easily acceptable, adoptable. But I think it is also something where we probably need some more thinking about how the standard is elaborated, because sometimes it becomes a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and then it's really only something for the insiders. And I think that's, of course, it's a big order to solve that. You can't just solve it like that. But again, I hope that digital solutions will help us on that path as well.
Thanks. Cory.
Ezra, que está aquí en la sala, quiere hacer una pregunta, lo más breve posible, por favor.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your presentation. Yes, just a curious question, though. A small island developing state with developing national standard bodies, and speaking as well for SMEs, we face many challenges in catching up, first of all, and then implementing the various emerging innovation, issues of climate change, and of course of this digital transformation. And my curiosity is that, in your opinion, how can we truly catch up with these apparent changes? Thank you.
Two very concrete suggestions. Number one, to develop your national standardization strategy is of the essence, because, as I said before, you cannot be everywhere, so you need to connect the standardization process with your national priorities. Second, use to the full extent the action plan for developing countries, because we have very concrete options today, such as the sponsorship program, where we can finance the participation of experts from your country in whatever technical community that is a priority for you. Not whatever, up to 3 technical committees that are a priority for 2. Those programs are not fully utilized by the region, and this is something that we've been discussing with Cory in the past. How do we better promote it? But it requires quite a bit of leadership as well to make sure that that is successful.
Maybe just one addition. Of course, I'm not advocating here regional standards over international standards. Our principle is international standards first. But in the use and application of those, I think there is evident that you need to team up with your peers, with your other countries with similar challenges, similar situations. I've myself worked for a regional trade organization, as Roberto said at the outset. And I think that's what you do. You look near you. How are you dealing with it? And you compare notes, and that is at least a step to facilitate the adoption and the understanding of those standards and conformity assessment services.
The final question? Yes, please, very concrete, because it's time to lunch. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to say it in Spanish to maintain the balance. Cortito, bueno, el desafío que mencionaban con el tema de los profesionales jóvenes, de la flexibilidad hacia ambos lados, el desafío es la flexibilidad del joven hacia la contraparte más adulta, ¿no? Y, do you want me to say it in English, Sergio? No? Y bueno, la pregunta es, ¿qué están haciendo las organizaciones para crear guías para implementar el tema de cambio climático a países en desarrollo que tenemos quizá un gap mayor que los países ya desarrollados? Porque tenemos muchos estándares, pero la implementación de estos estándares y priorizar qué es más importante en nuestros países, ¿qué están haciendo o qué pretenden hacer las organizaciones tanto ISO como IEC.
Like a tool.
It's like you mentioned, leaving no one behind. So, what are you guys doing to help us not be left behind?
In our case, we don't have a specific program to support the implementation of the standards. It's more to support the NSBs in their organizational development, which includes stakeholder engagement. So through that angle, we can support the implementation of organizations, SMEs, and so on. It's very important that the NSBs work very closely with governments and policymakers because the necessary, even financial support for the implementation of standards will come from there, not from ISO.
Yeah, because I was also going to add, of course, we have capacity building resources as well in the Secretariat, where our membership division, that also includes the capacity building resources per se, is reaching out, is in contact with the members to see what their needs are in terms of facilitating the adoption, facilitating the understanding of standards and conformity assessment services. I am not sure, and I don't think at the moment we make a real distinction between climate change and other standards or conformity assessment services. If there are specific hallmarks emerging that create a sort of a differentiated path or a necessity for a differentiated path, we could look into that. But I think at the moment we don't really distinguish between climate change or climate change related standards and conformity assessment and all the other standards.
So that's the end. So thank you very much to both of you. I think it has been a pleasure to be with these two lawyers. So a big round of applause for these two panels. And I think it's time to go for lunch. Cory, any logistic comment?
Sí, vamos a almorzar. Regresamos entonces a las 2 de la tarde, por favor en punto, para continuar con el...
So we will be back at 2 p.m.
2 p.m.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you.
Aquí en la puerta los van a guiar a donde es la sala de almuerzo. Pueden dejar sus cosas en la sala.
Afternoon, colleagues. There will be conference staff who will guide you to the lunch area. So as you make your way out the hall, the conference officials will guide you to the lunch area. In the Tiffany room is where lunch is served.